So today I am in the French Alps in Font-Romeu and the weather is absolutely stunning. It's cold, but it's stunning. And I have some absolutely fantastic scenery around me. And I'm just going to do my normal little walk. And as you know, the other day I did HYROX and did HYROX in Birmingham on Thursday. Literally 6 hours after finishing HYROX, jumped in the car and basically drove for just under, I'm going to say, about 15 hours to get down to Font for an altitude training camp. And the benefits of altitude are fabulous in terms of lots of athletes have lost lots of different descriptions, but predominantly, tongue-tied, predominantly endurance athletes. Not exclusive, but predominantly endurance athletes trying to boost VO2 max, trying to enhance endurance capacity, trying to adapt to lactate tolerance and really get some great training, not necessarily with reduced volumes, but by getting bigger emphasis from the training that they're doing with the volume without having to do even more miles than they do already. So it's a great way to stimulate increased hemoglobin concentrations, increased oxygenation, and get that to the working muscle to help boost VO2. So that's the reason to come to altitude. Now, I'm here with a group of talented runners, all quite young, but one of the lads is running very, very close to and very soon will be under 15 minutes, and he's just 17. So group of talented runners coming out to altitude, and they're squeezing it in their half term. So we're here just for 14 days rather than ideally the 2 to 3 weeks. And I could go on and talk about altitude, and I could talk about the concept of live high, train low. I could talk about the concept that we're effectively doing at the moment, which is live high, train high. And I can talk about the concept of live high, train low. Or I've done that one already, but you've got all the different options, you know. So we're going to try and get to altitude. Do we train up there? Do we live up there? Do we live at altitude and drop down to sea level to train there? Or do we do everything at altitude? And we're here to do the traditional altitude camp of actually training up here. And the concept is all about enhancing endurance capacity, enhancing VO2 max, and ultimately enhancing performance. But as I got out of the car with massive DOMs, and I'm getting onto the point now, with massive DOMs from HYROX, ouch, 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 ouch. Now, I'm not sure if that's from the HYROX itself or from the drive, but one of the lads said to me, Garry, which is harder, half marathon or HYROX? And you know what? They're probably, for me at the moment, roughly around the same duration. I'd like to be running sub 120 for a half marathon if I was fit. Miles away from my 112, 115, and I can't remember exactly what it was PB many, many years ago. And I did 129 for HYROX with a bloody 6-minute penalty because I'm a muppet. But anyway, that 6-minute penalty probably actually cost me 2 minutes. So, probably cost me 4 minutes. Probably would have been 2 minutes lower. So again, similar sort of time durations. Now, to me, there's no direct straight answer to that. It's one of those that, again, we end up with turning ourselves in circles, trying to give people a straight answer. It's physiology. And I'm sure for me, the answer would be, at the moment, HYROX is a damn sight harder than me going and running a half marathon. I could pretty much, with my training status at the moment, you know, I can go out and I can cruise 7-8 miles without too much of a problem. I could go out and I could run a half marathon almost any day of the week. I got through HYROX. I didn't do particularly well. I wasn't particularly pretty. I lost a huge amount of time on the ones that really killed me were sandbag lunges and wall balls. And I think those are the ones that, certainly wall balls kill a lot of people, but those are the ones that particularly killed me. And as I went into sandbag lunges, I had cramp in my hamstring, and I wasn't even thinking I was going to be able to get to the floor at all. I thought that was me, that was race over. But you know what? I soldiered on through them. I took, a long time to get through them, but I got through them. And likewise, wall balls, I was not mentally there for them. I didn't perform at the level that I want. And I'm sure that when I revisit another HYROX, which I think I probably will, I reckon I've probably got 10 to 15 minutes to find. So I reckon I could be going somewhere around about 120, which would be somewhere around a good half marathon time for me at the moment. But I would still say for me, half marathon was considerably easier than HYROX. However, if you look at the split of my run to my exercises, it's obvious. I'm a runner. I was cruising around those laps, and I think they were a little bit shorter than a K, but I was cruising around them at just over 4 minutes for my 2 laps of running. So let's call it 4:10, 4:15 a K pace. And I was using that almost as my recovery for the exercises, the bits that were killing me, the bits that were compromising me. Whereas a lot of the HYROX athletes can absolutely smash out the exercises, but politely can't run for toffee. And so for them, if you ask them that question, what's easier, HYROX or a half marathon, I'm sure they would be like me, walking like a penguin, having done a half marathon to 2 or 3 days, with the DOMs that they get by doing that, rather than all of the exercises they do from HYROX. And in fact, I saw a Facebook post today where there was a lady that raced the doubles, judged for 4 days, raced the singles, and then was getting home and she was running a charity run the next day. It's like, well, hang on a minute. I wouldn't be able to do that. Just could not do that at all. That just would have been miles and miles and miles away from what I was trying to achieve. And in fact, it's taken me until today, and we're Saturday. So I raced on Thursday. I managed to run easily 2 miles yesterday, but I've gone out Sunday morning and I've done a steady 7 miles this morning, and I'm still hurting, which is why I'm out walking this afternoon, just trying to loosen my legs out some more. I've stretched, I've foam rolled, I've used my compression boots, I have my compression tights on, I've been hydrating, I've been sticking a whole load of protein in. I'm trying to desperately get a massage booked, but I'm struggling because nobody works in France on a Sunday. So, I'm trying to do all I can to get my recovery the best it can possibly be, so that I can make the most of being up here at somewhere between, and the Font-Romeu itself, we run at sort of 1850 to 1900 meters. And when we go to Matamal and we run the lake, it's more like 1650 meters. So we've definitely got a compromise to what we're doing at training there. But the focus is actually saying, right, okay, what are we trying to do? What are we going to try and objectify? And I know I'm rattling on today. I'm doing one of those long ones where I'm prattling on, and there are lots of thoughts that are going through my head that try and give us that decision and that direction. So if I go back to what the lads said to me when I arrived, oh, Garry, how'd you get on? What's harder, a half marathon or HYROX? Well, for me, it was HYROX, but HYROX because I hadn't trained properly for it. It wasn't my key objective. It was something that I was doing for a bit of fun so that I could go through that process, that when I've got athletes coming to see me that are saying, Garry, I'm training for HYROX and I want to, know my training zones. I want to improve my VO2 max. I need you to help me with my running for my HYROX performance. I've been there. I've done it. Probably not to the best of my ability, but I know what that process was and I know what it feels like. And I know now, having raced at an event, that I can say, yeah, I haven't just done a sim in the gym. I've rocked up. I've got my little badge. I realise the decision-making choices that can go wrong. I've sussed out a fueling strategy that worked for me. I can break down what somebody is trying to achieve, and I can help them with those directions that they're looking for. I can help them objectify what they're trying to do to make sure that their performance is right. So it's not just about what's harder. It's about what you're training for, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And for me, running's a doddle. I've been running since I was 10. I'm not as quick as I used to be, but it still feels relatively easy. And I feel that when I'm in that groove, running is not an issue, not a stress whatsoever. Gym work, I hate it. I hate it with a passion. Now, to a certain extent, and this comes back to me and longevity and well-being, I realised that, having an upper body like a sparrow, but a fabulous cardiovascular system ain't going to help me out for longevity because, yes, great, I'm going to be able to keep going. I'm going to have a brilliant VO2 max when I'm 65, 75, hopefully 85. But if I haven't got the upper body strength to lift myself out of my chair or open the jar on a bottle, well, the lid on the jar, sorry, it ain't going to serve me any purpose. So again, it's what am I trying to achieve? And sometimes we've got to look at short-term focuses and say, right, this is the focus. This is what I'm trying to get to. This is what I'm trying to achieve at the moment. And from those achievements, or from that direction, what do I need to put in place in my training program, A, B, C, to get me to my ultimate objective? I'm going to say at the moment, my ultimate objective is health, well-being, fitness, still being able to perform. And I don't want to embarrass myself. And, I want to be one of the better ones at the club. And, potentially, and I haven't decided what I'm doing next season, I'd like to run another, dare I say it, sub 3-hour marathon at some stage. And, I'm going to be 55 in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm in a new, 55 to 59 age group. Do I go back and do some triathlons? And I still want to be able to perform. But I've now started to get to that point in my life where the performance is perhaps secondary to wellness, longevity, looking after myself. And so it's about putting it all into the mixing pot. And for me as an athlete, the objectives, the outcomes that I want might be completely different from the objectives, the outcomes that you're desiring. And so there isn't a which is harder, this or that. There isn't a this is the right way to do something or that's the wrong way to do something. It's about saying, right, where are we now? What is the point that we're at today? And what is where we want to be at point B or point C in the future? Now, if we're aiming for point C in the future, we might have a couple of stepping stones along the way. So what are we going to try and do? What are we going to try and achieve along that way to get to those stepping stones? How are we going to try and help ensure that the target, the progress, the progression is taking us in that right direction to make sure that you are going to see the outcomes, the desires that you want to achieve at point C? And it's about checking in. It's about making sure we're taking the right pathway, that we're not deviating off by too much, and that we keep coming back to the desired outcomes that we want. And that's all it's about. It's about just making sure that we're tracking in that right direction, that we've got the progress taking us in the right direction, that we don't have that scattergun approach. Because you know what? Everything I talk about is that having a clear, focused approach, we are more likely to get good, sensible, sustainable results by you working in a structured manner. And scattergun approach to training is brilliant. I can turn up at the CrossFit gym on a couple of nights a week. I can turn up to my running club a couple of nights a week. I can go out and, do some steady runs or some bike rides a couple of times. And that's all going to help my general fitness. But it's almost like going into the kitchen and lifting the first 6 or 8 things off the shelf, chucking them into a bowl, mixing them all up, and then sticking them into the microwave or the oven and wondering what we're going to come out with. Now, it could be absolutely vile, but it could be some insanely delicious mix. But you don't know. But the problem is that what you need to do is you need to start with some elements that are tried and tested. And once we've started with those elements that are tried and tested, then we can start adding some spices. We can start adding some flavor. We can start adding just that little bit of difference into the mix that might make it different for you. And that's where the one size doesn't fit all. That's where everybody's starting point is different and everybody's end point, whilst it might be generically the same, again, is going to be different. So, a marathon runner, I want to run a marathon, but what's the time? Why are you doing it? What's your objectives? How much training time you've got? What are we trying to get in terms of outcomes? Like the HYROX athlete that comes into me now, and I've been seeing quite a few of them that want fitness testing over the last few years. What are we trying to do? So I had a chap in the other day, HYROX athlete, great at the functional exercises, really, really good at the functional exercises, putting in supreme times already, but he's saying to me, Garry, I think I'm losing 2 or 3 minutes on the run. What can I do on my run to give me the time that I need to make sure that I'm on a podium at World Championships? And okay, he's got to qualify first, but that's what he needs. He needs to find 2 to 3 minutes somewhere to qualify at World Champs. But if he's already hitting the functional exercises phenomenally well, he ain't going to find that time by doing more functional work. He needs to think about the run form. Whereas me, you look at my times, and I ran something like 35 minutes for the run. I think I was in the rock zone for 5 or 6 minutes. So I was about 50 minutes on my functional exercises. Like, what? That would be horrendous for some people. So again, it's about finding the right elements of the performance that are needed to ensure that we both have what's appropriate to us to see what we need to achieve. And so that's the crucial bit. It isn't just about what's easier, what's harder, what's the way forward, what my VO2 max tells me, what my training zones are. It's about putting everything into that mix. It's about looking at what ingredients we've got in the first place. Because you know what? If you want to create a roast beef joint on a Sunday and you haven't got any meat in the house, it ain't going to happen. So we've got to think about what is right. We've got to think about what's right for you, what's right for your outcomes. And it might be that you want that roast beef joint on a Sunday. Well, you've got to make sure you go out and buy one on a Friday. And okay, so that's a step. That's something we've got to work towards. So it's about taking steps, logical progression to make sure that we're taking you in the right direction so that everything happens in a set way and we can evaluate what you need. We can evaluate your progress. We can monitor, we can reflect, we can change, and we can get the direction that you want. So it's not about what's harder. It's not about what's easier. I know I've got DOMs today because of a hard HYROX 2 or 3 days ago. And you know what? I probably would still have DOMs if I'd trained slightly better, but hopefully I would have been 5 or 10 minutes faster because, again, there's that balance of what are we trying to do? And sometimes things are a sign that you've pushed your body as far as you possibly can. And other times they're a sign that you've overtrained. It's not a sign that this is a great training session. And again, I've run half marathons and I've had DOMs for 2 or 3 days afterwards, but I've not found them mentally as hard as I did the different exercises at HYROX. There wasn't anything that really struggled with. There probably was. I was slow on some things, but I was able to do everything. And again, so a CrossFitter will come in and go, HYROX is easy. But again, you ask them to run a half marathon quickly. And I'd laugh at them. So it's what's easy for one person is really quite difficult for another. And it's finding out where the aims are going to be. So my take on it, HYROX is bloody hard. Running a half marathon is hard. At the moment for me, HYROX is harder. But what do I want to do in the future? Do I want to run half marathons? Do I want to do more HYROXes? I know whatever it is, when I've settled down and decided what I need to do, or what I want to do, a clear, focused training plan is going to get me the results that I want. And that's what I do for everybody else. So, I've whittled on for the last 10, 15 minutes. I want to give you some food for thought again. And it's just about saying, do you know where that direction is going? Do you know what you need to get you to that ultimate venue? That ultimate destination? Do you know what it looks like? Do you even know where that ultimate destination is? And do you know what stepping stones that you need to be putting in place to make sure that the jumps from one to the other aren't going to be too great and you're going to get wet, or they're going to be too close together and they're just not going to be effective enough? So that's what I'm here to do. We look at assessing fitness. We look at assessing VO2 max. We look at assessing performance. We look at assessing strengths and weaknesses. We look at taking training zones, we look at taking nutrition, and we look at taking body composition. We put all of that into the mixing pot. And from all of that information, the idea then is that we give you the ultimate bespoke plan to get you to where you want to be. You want some of that? Please give me a call. I know it's taken me a long time to get to that, but that's what I'm here for. And I just want to use my 35 years of experience to help you become the best version of you that you want to be. So over and out for now.